All right. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. And welcome everybody to our 2-day professional development on reimagining bioscience for Muslim students. I hope that you are as excited as I am to be ready to learn, inshallah. And we have a packed 2 hours ahead of us, inshallah. I know that some of us are joining on a Thursday night and others are joining on a Friday afternoon. Isn't that amazing? Subhanallah. I find it absolutely incredible. If you want, take a second to type in the chat your salams and where you're joining from. And perhaps share with us also, for the sake of our other presenters today, what's your role at your school? Are you a high school science teacher? Are you a science department lead? I even saw that we had 50 out of the 200 registrants, we had 50 that teach elementary. So very interesting here. So take a minute to do that as I go ahead and start our welcome and our introductions. So I want to say welcome to everybody joining us. These are all of the different countries that I noted on our registration list. We have the USA, Canada, Australia, Pakistan, South Africa, Saudi Arabia, Brunei, Malaysia, India, Gambia. I hope I'm not missing anyone that is joining from a different country. Absolutely incredible to be here with you all from all over the world. And this is exactly what we want. We want this professional development to be accessible to all of our Muslim Ummah, to anybody teaching Muslim students, because we believe that this curriculum is something that can really transform the way our students even think about biosciences and perhaps even the world. In addition, I know that this isn't everybody here, but these are some of the schools that we have represented. I think I stopped when I put this in alphabetical order so you can see where I stopped, maybe after the I's here. We have Malik Fahad School, with whom we have really tried to collaborate. We know that many of them are joining together on their 3 campuses in Australia. Thank you all so much. Legacy International Online High School, Islamic Foundation School, Generation School, Arizona Cultural Academy. We have Al Huda International School, Dreamer Schooling System, Lahore, Iqra Academy, Darul Uloom College. All of you who I've mentioned or not mentioned, welcome, welcome, welcome. So wonderful to be here with you. Well, who am I? I am Shaza Khan. I am the executive director, kind of losing my presentation here, of the Islamic Schools League of America. And it is really an honor to be your host tonight. For me, it's night. It's 9 p.m. in the night, or this morning, or this afternoon. I have my doctorate in curriculum and teaching curriculum and change from a school of education in Rochester, New York, where I was born and raised, where I studied adolescent development and identity formation. I'm very honored to be the executive director of the Islamic Schools League of America for the past 8 years, where we do wonderful, wonderful things to support the Islamic schools, primarily in the United States, but once in a while we get an opportunity to connect with all of you internationally. And if you can't tell, that really excites me. In the United States, we support over 300 full-time Islamic schools that serve over 70, we estimate about 70,000 Muslim students from K through 12, which is how far our schooling system goes before entering into college and university. Alhamdulillah, we try to provide research-based, research-informed resources and professional development, and we cultivate relationships between educators and institutions doing important work to advance Islamic education. So we are joined today on day 1 of our professional development workshop, and we have 3 objectives to summarize. We want you to be able to understand the basic differences between Islamic and secular epistemology. Inshallah, we have Dr. Omar Qureshi and Sister Aisha Basit who will be helping with achieving that goal. We want you to appreciate the approach, inshallah, used in the Bioscience and Islam curriculum. And so we have Dr. Rhoda who will be sharing a brief introduction about how much has gone into creating this curriculum. And we want you to be able to explore the curriculum and reflect on how it can be applied in your context, so that by day 2, we can end the session on Sunday night or Monday afternoon, wherever you're joining from, with some kind of action plan for implementation. It's really our goal to help everybody be able to implement this curriculum, inshallah, on your timelines. So the agenda for today is to set our norms. I'll be going over that. For us to all set our intentions, inshallah, we'll do a brief activity and to provide an overview of the Islam and the Bioscience and Islam curriculum, to provide some information about the worldview and Islamic and secular epistemology, and to explore Islam and bioscience curriculum. So we'll be spending the next couple of hours, inshallah, doing all that. So I want to set some expectations and some norms. We're all joining from different places. It may be something that you're very accustomed to, meaning receiving professional development and training online, or it might be something that's a little bit different. So I want you to understand what we're coming in as the hosts of this professional development, expecting and hoping from you. So we're asking for you to please join on time, and even better, 5 minutes early. Thank you to all of you who did. To have your cameras on. It's really hard to try and engage with participants when cameras are off. Totally understand. It's late at night or it's early in the morning or you're at home, but this allows for more active engagement, inshallah. So we ask for all of you who might not currently have your cameras on to please get camera ready and turn those cameras on so that we can have some active engagement. To have a notebook and pencil or pen to write with. I apologize if this is the first time you're hearing this. We did send out an email with this information, but I totally understand if you didn't receive that yet. If you have something to write with nearby, go ahead and grab it. If you don't worry. Inshallah, you can probably find some functionality on your laptop or PC to take some reflective notes on. We invite you and expect you to actively participate, to actively reflect, and to prepare to expand your thinking. So come in here with a growth mindset. Come in here hoping and searching for those nuggets of wisdom that you're going to have, inshallah, that you're going to walk away with by the end of this 2 hours today and by the end of the 4 hours on day 2. And if you would like to receive the certificate of completion, then we expect you to stay for the entire event and to complete the survey before leaving. That survey will be shared with you at the end of this session and the end of the next session. So you have to complete both of them. Yes, recording and resources will be shared, inshallah. So for those of you not looking for a certificate, that's okay. We're all adults. If you need to leave, get up. That's fine. You don't need to ask for permission, interrupt, unmute, none of that. Just go ahead and take care of what you need to take care of. We do hope that you engage with us using the chat because we're a large group and we're expecting this group to grow a little bit larger as the PD workshop goes on. We might need to be using the chat function a little bit more. Myself and Sister Lisa Kaler will be monitoring the chat as well as other presenters, and inshallah we'll take a note of that. If there's something urgent, you can feel free to unmute, but sometimes that takes us off our track. We're going to try and really stick to these 2 hours. We know that in Australia, some places it's going to be 4 p.m. and you're ready to leave. All right, so just a reminder, this is your opportunity to learn and grow and expand your thinking. Own it, inshallah. So Bismillah, let us start with an intentional Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. When we say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, what are we doing? We are beginning with the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most compassionate. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So I'm engaging in these activities as I'm encouraging you all to, and I'm reminding myself and all of us that actions are judged according to intentions. We know that this is a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. So as an icebreaker of sorts, I'm going to ask you all to consider and reflect on why are you here today. You're not going to go to the Padlet yet. That was supposed to appear a little bit later. But think about it. I'd like you to take 1 minute to quietly reflect. And this is where if you have your notebook, you can go ahead and write it down if that helps you process, or you can just close your eyes and think to yourself. And I'm going to ask you, I'm going to pause that for a second. I'm going to ask you to also consider, if you already know why you're here, because it's PD day, it's the first day back in school in Australia, and your, science department lead decided this was a great idea. That's fine. That can be why you're here. But think of ways to elevate that intention. Compound your intention with something that earns Allah's pleasure and makes it more meaningful. So we're going to take 1 minute to do that. And inshallah, after that, I'll ask you to share on the Padlet. So here goes the timer. We'll sit quietly and take note or think to ourselves about why we're here today. Oh, okay, there we are. So 1 minute has passed. Now, for those of you who are, oh boy, okay, so the QR code isn't showing because I know some of you are here in a group. Let's see if this can work. Sister Lisa, okay, will be putting in the chat the Padlet link. Thank you, Lisa. I'm asking you all to please go ahead and click on that link. Click the plus sign. I'm going to show you right here. So can you see the Padlet screen right now? I've got, I think, 6 people here on the Padlet. And on the bottom right here, you click the plus to type your intention. As you can see, I've put one intention that I kind of preloaded there. I'm going to add in my other intention right here. So go ahead, and in the chat, you'll find the link to the Padlet and add your intention. And if you're having trouble with the Padlet, don't let that hold you up. Go ahead and put your intention in the chat. All right, so we've got some coming up here. You click publish at the end. Great, Miss Adiba, thank you. I'm here to upgrade my knowledge in the field of biosciences for my students. Someone else said to use the knowledge and ability that Allah has given me in His way, to instill gratitude of Allah in the hearts and minds of young ones, to make meaningful questions between Allah's creations and scientific research and evidence. Thank you, Katie. I want to learn additional ways. Oh, this is hard with it moving. Where did it go? Okay, I want to learn additional ways to incorporate Islamic values and teachings within my science class curriculum. I'm interested in learning more about the curriculum on biosciences from an Islamic perspective that could help our school. Being a science teacher, I want to incorporate Islamic knowledge into my science lessons. And this PD is a great opportunity. Thanks, Playful Platypus. Samira is interested in learning more about the curriculum on biosciences from an Islamic perspective that could help their school. Thank you. DNA in my initials. That's your initials. That's so cool. You were meant for this. To learn how to inculcate in students how biosciences in particular help us get closer to Allah. Oh, may Allah and may help us use this knowledge for the benefit of humanity. Jazakallah khairan. Thank you all so much. Well, feel free as you're finishing this up. We're going to love to look at this. I know that Aisha is going to love this and all of the folks looking at this curriculum. And inshallah, we can try to revisit this too if time allows to see if we have met and satisfied, inshallah, some of these intentions. Thank you all so much for taking some time to really think about your intentions. So I'll ask you to wrap that up in the next few seconds, inshallah, and I'll go ahead and introduce Dr. Rhoda at this time. Let's see, am I going to present? There we go. Okay, so now we'd like to move on to the next part of our professional development workshop, where Dr. Rhoda will provide some information, some really high level information about the Bioscience and Islam curriculum. Dr. Rauda was the project lead, or Dr. Rauda, I didn't get that title in here, so I'm going to let you actually say it because I think I'm saying that wrong. In terms of what your relationship was with this project in particular, but I will share that Dr. Rauda is a researcher, writer, and social activist based in Kuala Lumpur, currently pursuing her postdoctoral fellowship at the Medical College of Wisconsin. She spent her medical school years in Alexandria, Egypt, where she also learned Arabic language and literature. She subsequently completed her Master of Public Health and Doctor of Public Health degrees at the University of Malaysia in 2015 and 2018, respectively. Her areas of research and interest include aging, elder abuse, and the health of marginalized populations, and Islamic bioethics. Jazakallah khairan, Dr. Rauda, for joining us to share a little bit more on this amazing curriculum. And do let us know exactly that title that you have with the curriculum, and feel free to share your screen at this time. Thank you all so much for adding your intentions. I hope that inshallah you can shift over now to the shared screen on Zoom so that you can see what Dr. Rhoda will be presenting.
Right. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Let me know if you can see my slides now.
Yes, we can.
Okay, that's great. Okay. Thank you, Sister Shaza, for the kind introduction. You got it right, actually. I'm a postdoctoral fellow, and I'm also the project manager for this project. I will be giving all of you a very brief overview of the this. I don't know how to call it. It's a project, it's a study, it's also some sort of investigation, but it's also a very exciting initiative that we have been working on for the past almost 3 years, actually. So I'm very aware, Sister Shaza, that I have only 7 minutes to finish 18 slides, so I'll be very quick.
Boy.
Okay, so first of all, this is the name of the project, Fostering Connections Between Bioscience and Theology for Muslim Students. More specifically, we are targeting pre-medical science and medical students. It is a 3-year project funded by the John Templeton Foundation. We started way back in October 2022, and the grant is expected to end in September this year. Our project principal investigator is Dr. Asim Padilla. He's not here today because he's working, but he will be joining us, inshallah, tomorrow. And there is a slide. He will be giving a talk, inshallah. So what's special about this project is that it is very theory-based and data-driven. I'll be touching a little bit more on that later. Our aim generally is to facilitate greater discourse and interest at the intersection of Islam and science among the Muslim community locally and globally. So this project has multiple phases. We have curricular development, and then we test. I'll just move on to the next one. So, okay, so basically this slide is to show you that we have multiple phases, but at the moment we are already at this training and implementation stage among Islamic schools and Muslim educators worldwide. So just to give you as a very brief overview about our team, this project comprises multiple institutions. We have scholars and collaborators from 6 countries, USA, the UK, Turkey, Arab Emirates, Malaysia, Pakistan, and Australia. And our scholars come from multidisciplinary backgrounds. We have bioscientists, physicians, theologians, philosophers, educators, and also even some journalists. These are our team members. Of course, this is not everyone. So I'm sorry if I missed anyone, but these are I would say, the core team members. Maybe some faces are familiar to you, but we have, I would kind of like just categorize our team members into 3 groups. We have the bioscientists, educators who are mostly, I guess, from the medical and health background. And then we have the curriculum, the curriculum or education experts, and then we have the theologians who are also educators at the same time. Now, talking about project phases and activities, this is just to give you an overview of where we started. Back in November 2022, we developed the curriculum, and then we piloted the curriculum in 2 countries, the US and Malaysia. We did the impact evaluation, and then we transformed the seminars into teaching modules. And so here we are now in the training and dissemination phase. Very briefly about the curriculum itself, this curriculum tries to address the 5 fundamental questions about the human beings. These are the 5 questions: the origin of humankind, nature of humankind, the future of humankind, the question of free will and predetermination, and then the question of human uniqueness. So again, these are some, I would say, additional features of the curriculum. I will not go through all of them, but I will just want to focus on one very important aspect, which is having Islamic rational epistemology as the foundation of this curriculum. And that is why we have Dr. Omar Qureshi after this, who will be speaking a lot more about that. So when we delivered the curriculum among students, what happened was that, as I said, there were 5 fundamental questions. So these are the 5 questions that we addressed through the seminars, but you can see that altogether we have 7 seminars. The first one is on the rational Islamic epistemology. The last one is just kind of a wrap-up session, but the 5 in the middle address the 5 big questions. I'll just give you, 5 seconds to have a look at the seminar topics. How do these big questions relate to each other? So this diagram shows that. You can see that Unit 1 means the first seminar, that we start with that to give students a very solid understanding and foundation in reasoning exercises in Islam and science. And then we teach the 5 big questions, the 5 units in the middle, and then we end it with introducing the epistemic framework. It's a wrap-up session, but it's basically where we teach the students technique of how would you think about it and how would you solve whatever conflicts that you might encounter at this intersection. Okay, so very briefly, these are the curricular goals. So first of all, we are looking into developing students' capacities to reason through perceived conflicts. And then we also want to enhance students' interest and preparedness and intention at this intersection. And we're trying to promote attitudinal change away from perceived inherent conflict. Basically, we're trying to promote a more positive attitude among students and educators about the relationship between Islam and science. This is just a very nice picture. I love this picture. This was taken when we piloted the seminars in Malaysia last year at the IIUM Islamic International Islamic University of Malaysia. Okay, Sis Shazza, how many more minutes do I have, or is it finished?
You have
Already?
a couple more minutes. No, you have a couple more minutes. You're good.
Okay, that's great. So I'll just go through this very quickly because I mentioned that we did impact evaluation. I think this is also quite important for me to share with the audience because we want to show that this is not just any curriculum. This is a curriculum that has been tested. We collected data, we analyzed the data, and we have actually published the data in the international journals of science education. This is the article that we published. I think there was a couple of more in July last year. We very briefly, the program participants, we have 50 in the United States arm and 190 in the Malaysian arm. And we collected this data. We managed to sort of prove that it was impactful in increasing knowledge, students' interest, preparedness, and intention to engage further at the intersection of Islam and bioscience. In terms of views on the relation between Islam and science, we found something very interesting because the quantitative data shows that there is a decline, meaning one might think that the attitude becomes more negative. But when we actually look at the qualitative data, because we also ask the students to write reflective essays upon completion of the seminars, so we actually found that their level of understanding and judgment became more nuanced. This is to say that students before the seminars, most of them tend to think that, oh, there's no problem, right? Islam and science are always in harmony. But that, I would say, view or opinion comes from a very simplistic understanding of Islam and science. But after going through the educational program or the sort of intervention that we did, they actually become more critical and they start to become more discerning when asked this kind of question, like, what do you think about the relationship between Islam and science? So some of them would actually say that, yes, I do still think it's harmonious and compatible. Some would say that it's conflictual, but they are very specific and they are very discerning when they say that. Why am I saying this? And some of them acknowledge that there are tensions, but a harmonious relationship is still possible. So I guess this is okay. This is my second last slide. This is just to show you how the website, the web page or curriculum looks like when you go to the link that we probably have shared it and we'll be sharing it again. And that's all. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. You can put the question in the chat box, and I can answer the question later. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rhoda. You did great. I had that you could go till 9:27 and you did perfect, mashallah. And I think what's really important about all of that is that this curriculum is driven by research and experts from around the world and in the biosciences as well as educators. And I know that many of you have been thinking about learning about Islamic worldview, about, how to have a school, a curriculum that's all compatible for our Muslim students within the Islamic worldview, but that concrete element, right, that implementation aspect was missing. And so, inshallah, with this curriculum, you will have something tangible to look at. I also know that many of you, that we did have a number of registrants who actually don't teach high school, and that's fine. We welcome you to be here. I do want to specify that the curriculum is meant for high school students and pre-medical track students as well in college. So inshallah, I know that, for example, Malik Fahad, I see you guys, mashallah, is here with their whole staff. So exciting, which includes elementary. So I'm actually really excited to hear how you all will also be discussing this and thinking about how this curriculum is meaningful for your school and for every grade level, inshallah. We will have more time at the end of today's session to look through the curriculum and do a little bit of exploration and chatting with each other. I want to give Sister Aisha some time, however, to open up some conversation around Islamic epistemology. Sister Aisha Basit worked on this project to help create the curricular materials that you'll be engaging with. She's a seasoned educator with experience teaching students grades 5 through 12. She has her bachelor's in education and biology and has been a teacher for 19 years. She taught high school honors and AP biology, which is advanced placement here in the United States, college level biology for high school students. She also has experience teaching in public schools and Islamic schools, as well as homeschooling, mashallah. She served 3 years in an administrative role. In addition, what's really unique about Sister Aisha is that she also brings the religious sciences into her pedagogical expertise and experience. She studied in an Alamiya program under traditional scholars in Chicago and online and abroad. She teaches and studies Tajweed, Quran, Arabic, and Tafsir classes to local women and children of Peoria, Illinois, where she currently resides. Sister Aisha, Jazakallah khairan for joining us, and we look forward to having the next portion of this PD with you, and then inshallah transitioning to Dr. Omar.
Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, everyone. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Bismillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulullah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. So let me go ahead and share my slides. So inshallah today, so our goal for the PD is to really make our knowledge and our time here very active, right? Instead of a passive learning experience, we want this to be in a learning experience that's going to really allow us to share in a way that is going to be very applicable. Right. So instead of giving a kind of a long introduction, we're going to get right into it, inshallah. So the first thing that we will do is we're going to have an observational activity. So I'm going to share with you guys a video. And what I would like you guys to do is to think like a scientist, right? And apply scientific reasoning to the video and think about what is being mentioned in the video in terms of how is this knowledge that they're sharing acquired and what claims are being made, and then what is the evidences that are going to give you those claims. So what we'll do is I'm going to have you guys jot down again if you followed Sister Shaza's instructions and you have paper and pen and that helps you, that's no problem. You can take notes that way. But inshallah, I will be sharing with you a Slido. And so that way you can take your notes and then upload those there as well. But what I'd really like for you guys to put down is thinking like a scientist. What information do you know and how and why do you think you know that, right? And so what we're going to do is see here. Oh, the Slido should open up, inshallah, just a second. There we go. So it will show up a QR code. So then that QR code you guys will be able to scan, or you can log in manually with slido.com and put in the code there. And this will allow you to, as you are watching the video, to post your insights as a scientist. What are you viewing and what are your thoughts based on that? Okay, so if I'll give you guys a second to go ahead and scan the QR code, or go ahead and put in this code. I will try to, let me put it in the, sorry, there you go.
We put it in the chat. Thank you, Sister
Yeah,
Aisha.
perfect.
If anybody wants that from the chat. Thanks, Sister Lisa, for putting that in there. How's that going, Malik Fad? Did you all get to scan that QR code?
Yes, scanned.
Awesome. Great. Okay.
Okay, so then I'm going to go ahead and play this video. And then inshallah, we will have our discussion post video.
And so, Sister Aisha, do you mind just restating the instructions? So we're going to watch the video, and on the Slido, we're going to type what we're seeing while we're watching the video or after?
You can do, so either way, whichever one you guys feel comfortable with, inshallah. If you feel comfortable taking notes and putting it up, I know sometimes multitasking can distract you from what the message is, right? Because this is the first time you guys are viewing the video. So you can do it that way as well, but I will, inshallah, give everyone a few minutes at the end so that way they have some time to properly put in their answers and be able to think properly and put that in. So don't worry about putting it in right away. But if you feel you would like to, no problem. But I wanted to have that with you so that way immediately you're able to put in the things that you have in your minds.
The question, Asmina is saying, what is the question?
So we're thinking like a scientist, and we're trying to see what is the knowledge that is being shared. And we're also trying to observe what are the claims that are being made here, right? And if there are certain claims that are being made, then what is the evidence that is presented for such claims? Okay, so those are the kind of 2-3 things that you're looking for. Like, how is this knowledge being presented? And how is that knowledge attained or was attained, right? What is the kind of the background behind that knowledge? As well as what are the claims that are being made evidence for them? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So inshallah, let's go ahead and begin. And then I won't be playing the entire video just for the sake of time. Inshallah, we'll do kind of the beginning and end bits.
Beyond surmising fascinating
Sister Aisha, we can't hear it, but alhamdulillah, the closed captioning is there.
Okay.
I think if you when you share your screen, you have to share to optimize for audio. You have to unshare your screen right now, and then when you
Okay.
go to click the share on Zoom, then you have to optimize for volume. Okay, yeah. Got it.
Okay. Let's try one more time and let me know if this works this time, inshallah.
Have you ever wondered how your body knows to
It worked.
fight off an infection, or why you look so much like your parents? The answer lies in the fascinating realm of human biosciences. This captivating field delves into the science of life and living organisms, focusing particularly on us, Homo sapiens. Imagine peering into the microscopic world that exists within us all, a world teeming with cells, genes, and proteins, all working in harmony to create the marvel that is the human body. You can see, human biosciences is a fascinating field that touches every aspect of our lives. So what are the key points to remember from our quick exploration of human biosciences? Well, firstly, the significance of human biosciences cannot be overstated. They underpin our understanding of life itself. Secondly, the basics of genetics and immunology are integral to this discipline. They influence everything from our physical traits to our ability to fight diseases. And lastly, these fields are not abstract concepts. They impact our everyday life in myriad ways. Remember, the next time you catch a cold or look in the mirror, there's a whole world of human biosciences at work. Students with
Okay. So now, go ahead and I'll give you guys a couple of minutes to put in your thoughts of the information that was shared within this video. What are your thoughts? What is the information, the evidences behind that information that was shared?
And again, you can use that Slido link there in the chat to type in your observations about what knowledge was being shared, what claims are being made, what evidence was being shared for those claims. Or you can use the chat, sure.
Is it working now? Perhaps because it says active poll. Okay, perfect. Alhamdulillah. So if you guys want to give me a thumbs up, just to kind of make sure that we've got all of our answers here. Awesome, alhamdulillah. Getting some great thoughts in here. Seems like this is not the first time you guys have had this experience. So alhamdulillah, very good. MashaAllah, getting some great answers. So inshallah, this activity is a two-part activity. Inshallah, what I will do is I'm going to continue this activity, and the second portion of it after Dr. Omar gives us his insightful words, inshallah. And so what we are going to do is we are going to revisit this understanding as well as some of your guys' comments a little bit later after Dr. Omar has presented. And I really want you guys to see some of the differences in the way that we are thinking about science and the knowledge that is being shared through science. Okay, perfect, inshallah. So Dr. Sister Shaza, I will pass it back on to you, and so we can move forward, and then inshallah, we'll come back to engage our audience with the second part of this activity, inshallah.
Thank you so much, Sister Aisha, for getting our minds thinking and starting to uncover the ways in which we traditionally think about the biosciences so that we can really engage in this kind of paradigm shift, inshallah, with Dr. Omar Qureshi. Again, just wanting to highlight that some of what we want to do here in this professional development is allow ourselves to experience a paradigm shift while we prepare to teach our students in a way that will be perhaps more unique and different from the ways in which we've traditionally taught biosciences. And so Dr. Omar Qureshi, as you heard Dr. Rhoda sharing, that epistemology is at the foundation of this whole curriculum, the Islamic epistemology. And what does that even mean for, inshallah, Dr. Omar will be getting into all of that. Dr. Omar Qureshi earned his Bachelor's of Arts in Microbiology and subsequently completed his Master's in Education and Curriculum and Instruction in Science Education, both from the University of Missouri, Columbia. Later, he earned his PhD in Cultural and Educational Policy Studies with specialization in the philosophy of education from Loyola University in 2016. In the field of Islamic sciences, Dr. Qureshi has studied various subjects, including Islamic law, logic, kalam theology, Islamic philosophy, Islamic legal theory, Quranic sciences, hadith, prophetic biography, and Islamic history. Dr. Omar, we look forward to having you expound more on some of these foundational ideas that will allow us as educators to approach this curriculum and the world, inshallah, with a different lens, perhaps. Thank you, Dr. Omar, for being here with us.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Can everybody hear well?
We can hear you.
Okay. Well, good. Jazakumullah khair, and Dr. Shaza, and also Sheikh Aisha for all, and Dr. Rhoda as well, for all of your introductions and your sessions that were leading the way up to this one. So yeah, alhamdulillah, I just a little bit about my background in education. I'm basically coming from the field of science education, started out as a biology instructor. With that, it expanded to chemistry and then a little bit of physics as well. And been working then as an administrator and principal of Islamic school as well, and emphasizing a lot on curriculum and curriculum development, especially working with teachers and to have a framework for developing curriculum as well. And so this is it's been a very good project. Alhamdulillah, I felt very fruitful working on this project with the Islamic Bioscience project here. So and here in this today's session, we're going to, obviously we had much larger and lengthier sessions with the students in Malaysia and students in Chicago. However, we're going to share, inshallah, some of that session and this evening, at least in my time. And so what we want to cover today is basically, inshallah, after this session, we want to see if we're able to answer for this session to be successful, basically 3 questions. So if we can all leave, inshallah, being able to answer, if you go back to your teachers or your administrators the next day and you're like, okay, I attended this workshop. What was it? Was it of any benefit? And you're able to say, well, yes, we can answer, 3 questions is, what is a worldview? The second question is, what does it mean to teach from an Islamic worldview? And third, what's an example of an element of our worldview in the area of science? So these are kind of, if we're able to explain what our worldview is in general, and then explain what does it mean when we talk about an Islamic worldview, and which is kind of the framework and the theoretical framework for this particular project, but also many others. I know Dr. Nadeem Maiman, for example, Dr. Ahmed, and others have written extensively about this idea of teaching from an Islamic worldview. And so that's something I think hopefully we'll be able to provide some concrete answers to. And third, some examples of this. Now, even though the example I'll give will be primarily in the area of bioscience, but then we can also extend it to the area of history and social science as well. And actually, you could extend it to all subject matters. But, in light of today's session, we'll just restrict ourselves to those 2, inshallah. So a worldview, basically, it's, if you look at this term, it's not really a, the way you would translate this to Arabic would be like, ru'yatul lil alam or something like that. Like, how do you see the world? So, it is a very common term used contemporary in English. Many faith-based institutions and churches, for example, the Christian world, the Jewish world, even Muslims were using this word worldview. However, the reason why we're using this word is we live in a context where, for example, we live in a democracy, but it's also called a secular democracy in the United States. And I think most European countries, and Australia included, would fall under that category. So we live in the secular environment. Why do we call it secular, for example? What does that mean when we use the term secular? It's a very, it's not a difficult term to define secularism, but there's many different conceptions of secularism. But the idea here is that there are ways of looking at, fundamental questions about reality, what's real, what's not real, what's the purpose of our life, how do we understand human beings? All of these questions, come about in the context that we live in. And so when we, this word we use, worldview, in a simple sense, is basically, a word that we say that describes the way in which we see reality. As a human being, all of us, how do we see reality, and and that's a very inclusive term of reality. It basically means everything. But we all have beliefs about what's real, what's not real, what's true, what's not true, what should we do, what should we not do ourselves, how do we understand as human beings, how do we understand ourselves in relation to other living beings, cats, do cats have rights, do dogs have rights, should we eat meat, should we not eat meat? These are all different questions that are coming about and they're stemming from our worldviews, and people have different worldviews, basically. So worldview here describes the way in which we see reality and form our students, right, to understand it. So this is where teaching comes in, right? We want to communicate our worldview, and we want our worldview to be formative, right, of ourselves, because it informs our actions, what we do, what we choose not to do. But it also our students, right? We wanted to have this formative dimension where this is going to form our students, and in the sense that we want them to understand this worldview, and then also to live within this worldview, right? So it informs all of their decisions as well and how they live their lives. What does it mean to teach in a slightly more philosophical manner? A worldview is an ordered set of propositions that one believes. The word proposition here, it just means a statement. Like, if you say Zaid is standing, that's a proposition, and it's an affirmative proposition. So these are an ordered set of propositions that one believes, especially propositions, though, about life's most important questions. So, for example, the Quran asks us a lot of these important questions. One of the interesting, aspects about the Quran is that it's a book that we read, but it asks us questions too, right? It's not just that we're asking questions and looking for answers in the Quran. The Quran comes back and asks us questions. So one of the major questions the Quran asks is فَأَيْنَ تَذْهَبُونَ, for example, and where are you going? Like, what's the end of all of this? What's the trajectory of your life? This is what they call existential question, right? Where have we come from? All of these are questions that are, these are basically our philosophical questions, theological questions. And this is what we basically say constitutes our worldview. So some of the questions that our worldview answers are, what is a human being, right? A very important question. What is the origin of the human being? For example, like, this is a very contested question in Western context. Is there such a thing as human nature, for example? Many people believe that there is no such thing as a human nature, and others, hold very dear to this concept that there is such a thing that makes us human. And these are important questions, and much of our division that we find ourselves in and debates, whether it's in the universities, when it enters into the realm of politics as well, stems from this very question: is what is a human being? So, for example, when does life begin? This impacts issues like abortion. This impacts issues such as people will object to the eating of meat, for example. Many people will choose to be vegetarian because they would say, well, we're animals, what right do we have to take the life of another animal, right? All of these come from this definition of a human being and how we relate to other living beings, other animals, right? What's the origin of human beings? This is a very important question that comes up, and it's because Darwinism has raised this question in a very serious way, because it's given Darwinian theory of evolution has given its own explanation, its own account of the origin of human beings, right? And so basically saying that human beings have the same type of that we have evolved from prior species. And what this does is this impacts how is there such a thing as a hierarchy in nature, in the created universe? Are humans really anything special in that regard if we're just like all other living animals, in the sense that we evolved from those different from previous life forms and things like that? So these are all questions that when you answer whatever you answer this question, whatever your answers are to these questions, this constitutes your worldview. Where did I come from? Where am I going? What's the nature of material reality, right? Is there a purpose of the cosmos? And so this is there a purpose of the cosmos? Why, questions like, why is it possible to know anything at all? How do we know things? This is where epistemology comes into, what's called the question of epistemology. Is there any meaning to human history? So this comes into our understanding of how we teach history. Is history just a random set of events that occurred and are taking place is coincidentally, or is there an arc and the overall end or trajectory of human history where it's supposed to lead to? So this enters into history. How you answer this question, this constitutes your worldview or your philosophy. How can I know what is right and wrong? And then what is the truth, and how can I know the truth? So all of these are, if you ask what does a worldview mean, these are the questions which constitute a worldview, right? A worldview answers these, and of course many other questions, but I just wanted to give a good number of questions to give us a good idea of what constitutes a worldview. So it's basically an ordered set of propositions that one believes, especially propositions about life's most important questions. And if there are any questions here too, I won't answer any of these questions right now because that takes a whole, these are things that one goes through as they read the Quran, as they read the Sunnah, you will be given these answers, and as you study your theology, as you study as we study Islamic laws, all of these questions get answered. And there is some difference of opinion, as we know from our scholars on this question too. But yeah, so let's see here. Yeah, so now if that's what a worldview is, then what does it mean to teach from an Islamic worldview, right? That's I think, very important for us. Basically, to teach from an Islamic worldview, it means to teach any discipline of knowledge, and to teach each and every subject, and not just Islamic studies, right? This is a key point here. We're not just talking about Islamic studies. We're talking about teaching math, teaching social studies, history. We're talking about teaching science, right? Physics, chemistry, biology. We're talking about literature classes, English. We're talking about all these other classes, to teach them in a manner, right? So teach each and every subject, not just Islamic studies, in a manner that how we answer each question of a worldview is made explicit when we're teaching that subject, and it informs our study of each subject. So in other words, if we're teaching English, right, what is our understanding of language, for example, right? What's the origin of human language? This question has been discussed widely amongst our scholars, right? Are we bringing in our understanding of language, the origin of language? What's the nature of words? What's the nature of letters? What's the nature of grammar? All of these questions, are we bringing them into our teaching of English class, of our literature class, for example? Right. So when we talk about teaching from an Islamic worldview, we're not just talking about adding a fatwa in, after teaching a particular class, or adding a particular, or just calling in our Islamic studies teacher to answer a couple of questions about the subject that this may entail. So we're not talking about any of those things. We're talking about way beyond just Islamic studies here. So teaching from an Islamic worldview, it impacts all of our teachings. Basically, our worldview should color our entire school, even our school culture, right? From the moment we enter the school, right? Things like, is our school clean, right? What's the when we enter our school, do we see things in a disorderly fashion, right? This is not part of our worldview, right? But when we enter an Islamic school, for example, does this reflect our philosophical commitments? Does it reflect our worldview? Is it an aesthetically pleasing place? Is our classroom a classroom where students would actually want to be, or does it have a certain type of, like if we go, it was interesting. I just went to a title company for our house. I just purchased a house, and when I went to the office to sign, like about 40 pages of documents, just the room that the title office had, just to sign the documents, it was such a pleasant room to be in. In other words, they had a nice table, they had nice chairs, it was very clean, it smelled very nice. They gave water, they made people feel comfortable, and it was a place that one would actually want to be in. And this reflects, obviously, the people who work there. This reflects their worldview. When you go to a masjid, when you go to not just a masjid, but when you go to an office, when you go to a school, all of these, this is what we're talking about, our worldview. It's not just Islamic studies that we're focusing on. It's every single subject that we teach from an Islamic worldview. So we make whatever questions that, if you're teaching economics, well, what's our economic theory? You're making those questions explicit, right? And then you're also, as you teach economics and as you further your questions and inquiries in economics in the classroom, you are answering those questions based on the worldview, right? Based on the questions that are already there. So an example in economics, class would be, as Muslims and the Sharia, money, currency, is not a commodity, for example, right? And like a cup or tables or furniture or computers, those are all commodities that you can buy and sell in. but money itself is not something you buy. You don't buy and sell money. Now, this is something very important from our worldview, because it gets into the nature of property. It gets into the nature of what constitutes a commodity. It impacts buying and selling, what can and cannot be bought and sold. And this is very different and at variance with the current economic systems that are in place pretty much in the world right now, where money is a commodity and you can buy and sell in just money. So this would be something that would our students in the economic class should know about, and the teacher should know and should make explicit. And then when they analyze other issues in their economics class, whether there's macro or micro, this should be informing their study of that particular subject. So what does it mean to answer each question of our worldview? The answers to each question that, that we was on the previous slide, excuse me, of our worldview is derived from the Quran and Sunnah. But this is important, and as Muslims, we have to understand this as understood and interpreted by the scholarly traditions of Islam, right? This is very important when we talk about the Islamic tradition. So we have to understand that, the Quran and Sunnah, it's always interpreted, right? And we always have to follow the best and the most blessed of all interpretations. And those interpretations are done by our scholars, starting from the Sahaba to the Salaf al-Salih, and continuing up until our time. And so this is incredibly important, right? So in law, for example, this means, we should look at Imam Malik's interpretation, Imam Abu Hanifa's, Imam Shafi'i's, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. In theology and spirituality, all of these sciences, we have to take our Islamic scholarly tradition very seriously. And this is something important. So when we're looking at answers to these questions, it's not like we have to really, like, we want to know what the human being is. That the answer to that question has already been articulated and already been fleshed out by our ulama. They've done that. So we really need to look at the Quran and Sunnah through the interpretations and the understandings of the scholarly traditions of Islam. So having said that, that's what it means to teach from an Islamic worldview. Excuse me. Let's go through some examples here. So, actually, this is one example. I thought we were going to go to another one, but another example here is this idea of the principle. This is known in Western legal theory. This idea of the principle of self-ownership, right? This is a very good example of what of how a worldview impacts, and how the decisions we make, and just how important knowing our worldview is. So the principle of self-ownership, basically, this is a principle that states, and it's developed by John Locke. He's an empiricist, British empiricist, who belongs to the tradition of political liberalism. Excuse me. And the principle in political liberalism, the principle of self-ownership states that basically you own your body, and you can do whatever you do to your body, as long as it's your own choice. The government should allow for this, right, and should not intervene. Now, this is we live in a society, if we live in a political liberal society, I think most of our countries, with the exception of some of the Muslim ones, are political liberal, are unfortunately, even many of the Muslim ones adopt a lot of principles of political liberalism too. Excuse me. But this particular principle is interesting because it really goes against the Islamic worldview, in the sense that the Islamic worldview states that we actually do not own our bodies. We're kind of our bodies are given to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's why we're going to be asked what we do with our bodies. And because we don't own our bodies, we can't determine whatever it is. We can't do to our bodies whatever it is we want to do. This is incredibly important principle, right? And the way it impacts how we address very important questions, such as the whole issue of like transgenderism. No, you can't, just change whatever you feel like, because you don't own your body, right? You can't, for example, change this is not the issue of abortion, right? This impacts the issue of abortion. This impacts the issue of euthanasia. This impacts, I mean, a whole host of issues, right? That it impacts. So this is a good example of the principle of self-ownership of the Islamic worldview has a particular position, which is no, you do not own your body, right? And is in fact given to you by God. Whereas, and it has to be, you can use your body only as directed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whereas in the tradition of political liberalism, in fact, no, you do own your body and you can do basically what you want to your body as long as it's your own will. Okay, so let's go to science now, and let's look at the following example. If you can just take like 2 minutes and tell me, this is a table, right? Nothing too fancy here, but let's answer the following question. What caused this table to exist? How would you answer this question? You can write them in the chat if you want, or just take about 2 minutes to think about what caused this table to exist. What's everything that it took for this table to exist as it is? So we have some answers here. Someone must have wanted a higher place to put something without bending. That's good. Allah, since the wood comes from trees, which is Allah's creation, the mind that created it is also Allah's. Okay. Okay, so the table is made by a carpenter who took the wood from the tree created by Allah. Okay, good. So basically, if we're the way Muslims would normally, and not just Muslims, but even Persians, the Hindus, the Greeks, people would normally who had a type of religion, they would answer this question the following way. They would say, for example, that one, they will look and they would say there's actually not just one cause. The word cause, it will be applied in 4 different senses. So one, they would say there's a material cause, that out of which the thing is made. And so as people were talking about, here's the wood of the table in this case. That's called an illa al-maddiya. And so the material cause, think of the matter in this sense, right? But that alone is not sufficient to explain the table. The table is not just wood, it's obviously a lot more than that. And so it has a particular shape. Well, there has to be a cause for it to take on that particular shape, because wood exists in many different shapes. Why this particular shape? Such that we call it a table. We don't call it a bench, or we don't call it just wood that we find in a tree or firewood. So this is what's called the formal cause, al-illa suriya, the form. And meaning here, the account of what is it to be a table, right? So it has to be in this particular shape. And the shape of something, the formal cause, is very important, right? When we're to explain what the table to exist. In other words, if I were to like take the table and just kind of, press it together and, take everything apart, for example, the legs and all that, you wouldn't really call it a table anymore, right? So the form the shape has some important explanation as to the existence of the table. If I were to take an apple, for example, well, we'll do that next. So I'll wait to that time. But the form, this is an important point here. The form is prior to the material cause. In other words, the form of the table has to exist prior to the table existing itself, right? And so, in other words, the table, the material, the wood, is put in the form of the table, but that formal cause, the form of the table, must exist prior to the table itself. That's not enough, though, right? That's not enough. You can have the shape, you can have the material, but you need someone to actually go and make the table, right, to explain its existence. So this is what's called the efficient cause, al-illa al-fa'iliyya. It's the primary source of change or rest, so in this case, it'll be the carpenter, right? It explains who takes out the table, takes out the wood and puts it in the form of the table. Now, the form of the table exists in the mind of the carpenter, though, right? So the efficient cause is also extremely important. And then that's still not enough, right, to explain the table. I think someone mentioned it here, so they don't have to bend their back to place things on it. You need what's called a final cause, right? And the final cause is called al-illa al-gha'iyya, is the end or that for the sake of which a thing is done. So why was the table made, right? So the table could be used for studying, it can be used for eating, for example, right? So that also explains the existence of the table. And the final cause and the formal cause are extremely important to explain the table and the existence of a table as it is, right? For example, health, the final cause of health is walking or losing weight. Now, the final cause is prior to all other causes. This is important. The purpose is actually first. And then once you have the purpose in mind, then you say, oh, I want something to study on. And then you say, oh, it should have this form, and that's the form of a table. Then you look at the material, and then you find the material, and then you go ahead and make the table. The carpenter will make the table. So if you were to place these in order, the final cause actually is prior to all other causes, right? So that's with the table. Let's the important point here is when we're teaching science, for example, science has restricted the notion of cause to efficient cause only. When a scientist says cause, they are really looking at cause in sense number 3, the efficient cause, right? And this and so what do they do with the other 3 types of causes, or at least the second and fourth, the formal and final cause? Under a Darwinian conception of reality, a Cartesian Newtonian as well, the formal and final cause, they don't investigate it. They don't even acknowledge that there is a final or formal cause. So when they look at nature and the natural world, they've eliminated purpose, the final cause, that for the sake of which a thing is done, and they also have eliminated the formal cause. And this is a major shift as to how science is done. So now, whenever we study science, biology, medicine, we do, physics, we do nursing, we're only focused on the material and efficient cause. Whereas in the past, right, Muslim scientists would be concerned about those 2 causes, but also be concerned about the formal and the final cause as well, to explain the nature and the reality of a thing as to why it exists. This is a major shift, right, in how science is done. And I think we need to introduce this, and this is a good example of what teaching from an Islamic worldview would entail. We need to introduce this into our thinking in science, and we need to start asking, having our students understand what these 4 types of causes are. And then when they see things and they study things, whether in physics, chemistry, or biology, they need to ask all of these questions, right?
And Dr.
Say,
Omar, I just want
to see
to
all
chime in
4.
that we've got a 2-minute warning here.
2 minutes. Okay, thank you. I'll go through the next one really quick. Let's take the following. Let's take this example of an apple now. Right, what caused the apple to exist, right? And we can answer it in similar ways, right? And when we're going to answer this question, we're going to think about the material of the apple. We're going to think about which is the material cause, the form of the apple, right? If I were to take this apple and just kind of smash it together, right, it's the same matter, but it's not the same form anymore, right? Such that I wouldn't call it an apple anymore, right? So the form, I hope we could appreciate how the form and the shape of something is extremely critical to what the thing is, right? I think that's important. And then we can look at the final cut. Now, a Darwinian biologist or, they would probably say, well, the apple doesn't have a purpose, you see? And, the fact that the apple has a shape, it's not really important. It doesn't have anything to do with what the apple is. We're just concerned, we're just going to reduce the apple to, the matter and perhaps the efficient cause, which is somebody planted a seed or something. And not even somebody planted a seed. It's just, it can be, just the wind blowing a seed into, and then rain falling and something like that. It doesn't have to be somebody necessarily planting it. No one designed the apple either, right? That's an important thing. There's no purpose and there's no design in this apple. So that's an important thing of how we look at why is it that when we contrast this to a Darwinian way of looking at, what we call a natural object, it's fundamentally different, right, than how we would, when you explain this object, the apple, in the sense of four causes. In the consideration of time, I'll just go to how do we apply the four causes in history and social studies. So Ibn Khaldun, radiallahu anhu, he, in his great work Al-Muqaddimah, he viewed human social organization, Umran, in the following manner too, of four causes. So why do humans form villages? Why do we form cities, right? Towns, and then how do cities rise and how do cities fall? He viewed this all through the lens of the four causes as well. So for him, the material cause of human social organization, that out of which cities or humans organize, it's called culture for him, Umran. And that refers to the economic and urban, all economic and urban institutions that we see here. That's the material cause of human social organization. The formal cause would be the state, the dawla, right, governance. And the efficient cause, like what actually gets the city to be formed, would be what he calls group solidarity or asabiya, right? And this is a very important, concept in Ibn Khaldun develops. And then the final cause would be the why do we have cities? Like, what's the end purpose of humans socially organizing? What's the end? What's that for the sake of which it is done? A thing is done is the common good, al-maslaha al-amma. And this would be such as justice, moderation, the afterlife, all of the virtues that we see here. That's the purpose of cities. And why do we even get together as human beings and eventually grow into cities and the state? Has to do with achieving the common good. So you can see here how this applies in science. This could apply in carpentry. This could apply, this idea of four causes would apply in history and social studies as well. You could apply to economics. You could apply to all, each and every science you can apply this to. And right now the curriculums that we're using, if we're using state curriculums, they're usually informed by a secular worldview, which doesn't really acknowledge the formal and final causes of things, and their explanation of the efficient cause is very questionable, and they really only focus on the material causes of things. So when we're talking about teaching any of these subject matters from an Islamic worldview, this is one key element that we would need to include in our way of thinking about reality. And hopefully this clarifies, what constitutes an element of an Islamic worldview. Hopefully,
Thank you so
Dr.
much.
Cesar, inshallah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Omar, and I invite you to take a look at some of those questions coming in the chat as well as we transition over to Sister Aisha, who's going to help us. I mean, I think it gives a lot for us to think about, Dr. Omar, and also it might raise some questions especially for those of you, I see some people sitting in their classrooms right now. How am I going to have high schoolers sit through and listen and understand all of this? And I think that's where the beautiful aspect of this curriculum design comes in, where we have people who are thinking at such a high level and then translating it into the ways in which this is going to be understandable concretely into specific examples, like Dr. Omar took us through the example of the table and the apple, as well as within curricular topics, which is a lot of what Sister Aisha had done for us with this curriculum. So Sister Aisha, we pass the microphone back over to you with the excitement of learning and you engaging us in how we're going to apply this to our own thinking and what kinds of paradigm shifts might this create for us and for our students as they think about specific topics.
Jazakallah khair. And Jazakallah khair, Dr. Omar, for that very insightful discussion.
And Sister Aisha, sorry, before you get in, I didn't want to interrupt you before, but we do see a big black kind of gray square in the middle of it might be the participant list or the chat box or something. And it's just a gray square right there. Yep, where your arrow is. If you can move whatever that is to the side, because wherever it's located, we're not able to see behind that. So it's where it says as you might need to just minimize whatever it is.
Okay. Are you able to see it now?
Yeah, it's now on the other side. I think you need to,
Okay.
if it's something that
That
can be
is the
closed.
chat box. Okay.
Yeah, so you have to, there you go, now it's gone.
Right.
So I'll read to you anything that's in the chat box, so I think just don't worry about that, inshallah.
That works. Perfect, inshallah. All right, Jazakallah khair, Bismillah. So, kind of building off of what Dr. Omar had just explained to us, what I would like you guys to do is I'm going to share the video once more, and I would like you to now think of looking at this video as a Muslim scientist, right? What are the things that you would notice differently, right? So we're going to try to apply this Islamic epistemic framework that Dr. Omar had mentioned to us, and we're going to look at what are the things that are going to apply in terms of an Islamic epistemology, right? So what more would I look at as a Muslim scientist, right? Not just a scientist, but a Muslim scientist. And how does that change the way that I look at the things that are presented to me, right? So in terms of what Dr. Omar had just presented, even if we're looking at those 4 causes, which ones were addressed and which ones were not addressed? And I think Dr. Omar kind of already gave it away a little bit, but let's see if we're able to find those 4 causes and which ones we're able to find. So inshallah, I'm going to play the video once more. And then actually, before we do that, if you guys would all like to join the next Slido, so that way we can input our thoughts there. So here is where I would like you guys to go ahead and put those comments of viewing this now as a Muslim scientist particularly, right? So I'll give you guys a second to go ahead and scan that QR code or go ahead and put it on the website. So that way you'll be all ready to go. And then inshallah, I will play the video once more. And then what I will do afterwards is give you guys a couple of minutes to think about it and then put in your answers. And then we'll go ahead and discuss it as a group, inshallah.
And Lisa's put that in the chat as well if you want to click on that for those of us joining from our laptops. You see where it says joining as a participant, and then you enter your code in there once you get to slido.com.
All right, so I see a few participants typing, so then let's go ahead and play back that video once more.
ADHD saved 10 hours studying with this Chrome extension.
So are you guys able to hear?
By all means, go.
Yes, we hear it.
Perfect.
You can see, human biosciences is a fascinating field. Have you ever wondered how your body knows to fight off an infection, or why you look so much like your parents? The answer lies in the fascinating realm of human biosciences. This captivating field delves into the science of life and living organisms, focusing particularly on us, Homo sapiens. Imagine peering into the microscopic world that exists within us all, a world teeming with cells, genes, and proteins, all working in harmony to create the marvel that is the human body. Human biosciences provides us with a unique lens to view and understand this intricate dance of life. It unravels the secrets of our genetic makeup, explaining why we have our mother's eyes or our father's laugh. It also sheds light on our immune system, the body's personal army, always on guard, ready to defend against invading germs. Now that we've piqued your interest, you can see, human biosciences is a fascinating field that touches every aspect of our lives. So what are the key points to remember from our quick exploration of human biosciences? Well, firstly, the significance of human biosciences cannot be overstated. They underpin our understanding of life itself. Secondly, the basics of genetics and immunology are integral to this discipline. They influence everything from our physical traits to our ability to fight diseases. And lastly, these fields are not abstract concepts. They impact our everyday life in myriad ways. Remember, the next time you catch a cold or look in the mirror, there's a whole world of human biosciences at work. Have you ever wondered how your body...
Okay. So I'll give you guys a couple of minutes to go ahead and put in the Slido, your thoughts? So again, now we're looking at it as a Muslim scientist. And the Slido is working for everybody? Alhamdulillah. Okay. So we can wrap it up, inshallah. MashaAllah, we've got quite a few responses, alhamdulillah. All right. So a couple of things that I've noticed even in the responses that most of you had written for the comments about thinking about it as a scientist, many of you guys noted a couple of things, right? So some of you guys mentioned that the knowledge that was presented in the video was limited, right? It mentioned that it was limited because of possibly the technology or the knowledge that we have that allows us to test these things, right? Also, some of you guys have quite notably noticed that only through observation is how we are able to have scientific knowledge, right? And a couple of you guys also mentioned that scientific knowledge is changeable. So possibly it's a possibility, right? Rather, and it's not absolute, right? And then a couple of things that I want to also mention was that it also claimed that we are Homo sapiens, right? And what is that based off of? And then the video claims that bioscience is part of every aspect of our lives. So does it include every aspect of our lives, right? What are some of the aspects of our lives that are missing, right? And so as a Muslim scientist, these are the types of questions that possibly we would ask versus just presenting it as just a regular scientist. Are you guys able to see my screen? Okay. So if we look at the video claims that the bioscience is mentioning that every aspect of our lives is being covered, but can it really be reduced to bioscience, right? Our lives are much more complicated than that, right? And the aspects that are not being included here would be aspects of perhaps our soul, right? Which is a very integral part of our lives. And so if we're looking at what makes bioscience so important, right? These are some of the things that as a Muslim scientist are being left out. So the other thing that's mentioned in the video is they quote, bioscience underpins our understanding of life itself, right? So that's a very bold statement to make, because if life is just bioscientific reactions or events taking place, what about the personal experiences that we go through, right? What about spiritual experiences? So, for example, in Surah Kahf, right, we know the famous story of where the treasure is underneath and there's a wall that's on top. And the reason that treasure was saved was that the father of these boys was a righteous person, right? So this shows that the effect of parents is not only genetics, right? Perhaps there's a spiritual link there as well. And so we're not only inheriting genetics from them, perhaps we're inheriting much more than that. So I wanted us to look at this comparison between the types of epistemology, right? So we have the scientific epistemology versus the Islamic epistemology. So if we compare these two, we'll see that there is a difference in the way that we approach science when we take this type of epistemology, right? And now scientific epistemology can be viewed as secular, right? But the reason why I'm using scientific epistemology here as the term is to make us think very specifically about the science, right? So if we look at scientific epistemology, right, we'll see that scientific epistemology is going to talk about knowledge that is empirical, right? So again, as many of you guys have noticed, it's only observational knowledge, right? And the things that are learned and attained through observation can only be limited to what can be seen, correct? And so in this, when we compare to Islamic epistemology, we'll see that Islamic epistemology covers a wide range of knowledge, right? It covers empirical knowledge, rational knowledge, as well as revelatory knowledge, right? And so this, as a Muslim scientist, right, I realize that there is more than what meets the eye, quite literally, right? Now, so when we think about this, we also see that it's not purely faith-based either, right? If it was, we would only focus on revelatory knowledge. But in fact, we do consider empirical knowledge and rational knowledge as well. The other aspect is that we see that scientific epistemology, science is the study of natural phenomenon of time and space. So therefore, we also see that, which means we can only look at certain aspects of reality and certain aspects that are limited by time and space. Anything that goes beyond time and space is outside of the realm of any type of scientific investment, right? Now, if we look at Islamic epistemology, we see that it includes natural phenomenon as well as the supernatural phenomenon. And so here, again, we're looking at more aspects of reality rather than a limited view of reality. The other thing that we see is the difference is that science is assumed to be neutral, right? And this is a very strong misconception that everyone thinks, well, science is just based on the facts, right? What we see and what we are observing, there's no other elements that are added to it. But in fact, science is influenced by the scientist himself or herself, right? Scientists are affected by their own views. For example, having a Epicurean view of life, right? Or possessing a naturalistic view of life, or even a neuroscience reductionist view of life. All of these are ways in which are going to affect the way that the scientist looks at their data and how they interpret that data, right? And so in all of these topics, actually, Epicurean view of life and the naturalistic, as well as neuroscience reductionist view of life, all of these are actually covered in the curriculum as well. Now, if we look at it, now that we know that science is not necessarily neutral, right? How would we look at the intention of a Muslim scientist? And how would that differ from what just a scientist would look at, right? So any thoughts? I'd like you guys to put it in the chat. But what are your thoughts of how would the intentions of a Muslim scientist differ from that of just a scientist. Don't be shy, guys.
This black chat box is appearing.
Are you guys still able to see my screen? Wonderful, right? So as a Muslim scientist, we have other avenues that we can get our thoughts from, right? Intentions of a Muslim scientist would be, for example, why are we exploring these realms of science, right? Why would we even look into these things? For example, in Islamic epistemology, the intent of the Islamic epistemology would be to establish a framework of acquiring knowledge that integrates reason, revelation, right, wahi, and empirical observations as well, ensuring that the knowledge that aligns with our divine truth, a moral purpose, as well as human well-being, right? So it extends beyond just knowledge or just having knowledge to applying and utilizing that knowledge to benefit, right? We, coming from an Islamic epistemology, seek to have a balance between rational inquiry with spiritual insight and guiding individuals towards a more deeper understanding, right, of that reality. And through both intellect as well as divine guidance, right, we're able to emphasize this element of ethical responsibility. And so here, this is where our purpose of science or going into any aspect of inquiry is going to be different than that of just a general scientist. Now, this kind of goes along with, if you understand that this is not the way that scientific epistemology approaches things, will be a very 2D type of understanding, right? It's very limited. It gives you only certain parameters that you're allowed to look at. Whereas if we look at it from an Islamic epistemology, we have a more vast way of looking at it, right? It's going to be more encompassing, and it's going to really allow us to improve our view of life as well as everything else that's there, right? And so this allows us to keep Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the picture, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created everything. As many of you guys have noted in the comments that you guys have mentioned, that all of the rules and laws of nature, scientific tools that we use, the researchers themselves, right, all are creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the end, right? So how can we take God out of the picture? How can we take revelatory knowledge out of the picture when we are looking at something that influences every aspect of our life, right? And so coming back to the video, in the video they mentioned that bioscience is going to underpin every element of our life, right? So does it truly underpin every element of our life? Well, coming from an Islamic epistemology, we'll realize that bioscience is a very limited aspect, and it doesn't underpin every aspect of our lives, right? So this moves us from a very flat view of things to having a more complete picture, right? We don't have to ignore certain types and sources of knowledge, and instead we're able to include all of these things, right? We're able to include our intent and analysis of research and what impact it makes on the world at large, right? Not only that, but we're able to look at the impact it makes in this world, along with the impact that it makes in the akhirah, in the hereafter, right? So this is a more holistic view of science. Even though we're labeling it Islamic epistemology, it's a more encompassing, right, holistic view of science. And we're able to use wahi in all areas of life. And that's what actually underpins and our understanding of life itself. And so the purpose of this activity was really to cause this paradigm shift, right? A change from looking at something very 2D, and when you see the word science, all of a sudden we're limiting our faculties to looking at only particular things. And so what I wanted to do is show how this paradigm shift is going to really enhance the way that we look at things, right? And the purpose of this activity is really, and the aim of the Exploring Bioscience in Islam curriculum at large, is to actually cause this type of paradigm shift, right? That our students are going to have this shift when they learn about these topics and learn about how to change our way of thinking. And honestly, that paradigm shift has to start with us as teachers first and foremost. So a paradigm shift occurs when a fundamental change in approach and underlying assumptions takes place. So when we're comparing scientific epistemology to Islamic epistemology, right, it reveals key differences that could result in such a shift in perspective, right? And as we mentioned, scientific epistemology, right, it's based on empiricism, right? It's based on rationalism, and knowledge is acquired through observation and experimentation and logical reasoning alone. Whereas if we look at Islamic epistemology, we have our knowledge is derived from both empirical methods as well as divine methods, right? Divine revelation in this case. And so the universe is not self-contained as science teaches us, right? As natural laws without requiring any type of metaphysical explanation. In Islamic epistemology, we're able to apply all of those thoughts that we see that everything that is in creation is a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created and sustained all of these things, and therefore they're not merely self-organized phenomenon, they're actually organized with an ultimate truth that resides with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so we also see that scientific knowledge is always tentative and it's always evolving. As one of our participants actually mentioned when we were talking about how to view this as a scientist, right? He mentioned specifically that scientific knowledge is changeable. It's a possibility, right? But it's always changing with more advanced technologies that we have to learn more about things. And so therefore we see that since science is tentative and it's evolving, right? It's subject to revision based on new evidence. But when we have certain things, we can come to a level of yaqeen or certainty when we have divine revelation as part of our process of examining these types of things. So we understand that science should not be value neutral, right? Coming from an Islamic epistemology, we see that it should be pursued for the benefit of humanity. And it aligns with Islamic ethics. So this shift from scientific reductionist approach, it's breaking complex systems into smaller parts to understand them. We move to an Islamic epistemology, right? And this Islamic epistemology is a holistic view of reality, where spirituality, physical, and moral dimensions are all interconnected. So the human body is not just a biological structure, right? And coming back to what Dr. Omar had mentioned, it's a creation with purpose, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us what that final cause is of human beings. And health is seen as a balance between physical, emotional, as well as spiritual well-being. And so this is that paradigm shift that we really wanted to emphasize in this curriculum, that when fundamental changes occur in the way that we think as human beings, as teachers, and then apply that and allow our students to think in such ways, we're going to make that paradigm shift so that way our students are able to think of things in a much more vast perspective, right? And so these are three main points in which the curriculum specifically is going to try to cause this paradigm shift. Right. So number one, to build conceptual literacy at the intersect of bioscience and theology among Muslim students. Right. So this will help students combat this kind of secular conditioning that Dr. Omar had mentioned that is present in our society today. Number two, to cultivate confidence in using all sources of knowledge, specifically wahi, right, revelation, as a genuine source of knowledge. Right. Having an Islamic worldview, which is wahi focused, along with utilizing knowledge from the rational and empirical sources, it will widen our horizon, right? When addressing fundamental questions about the human being. And by applying this kind of holistic epistemological framework, we as educators can help our students extend these concepts and thinking strategies to all aspects of this changing and advancing world. And lastly, we have to instill confidence in our Muslim youth, particularly regarding their deen. So this curriculum equips teachers to guide Muslim students in critically examining science and seeing it for its limitations, and shifting them from a passive acceptance to an active analysis of scientific concepts. So we aim to build students' confidence and yaqeen by fostering a genuine appreciation of how Islam holistically addresses these scientific topics. So with that, inshallah, I want to open it up to all of you if there are any questions and concerns about the difference between a scientific epistemology versus an Islamic epistemology. Jazakallah khair. Sorry, so now I can get back to the chat. Let's see.
Assalamu alaikum. There was a question in the chat regarding objective versus subjective and how does that apply? And that was by Sister Anya. She wanted to speak up.
Sure. So objective versus subjective, right? So obviously when we look at objective, we're going to be focused on the thing itself, right? So subjective is where you have a person's personal kind of, I guess you would say, their own perspectives put into that object, right? So they're looking at it more opinionate based, right? Rather than an actual what the element is, right? So in that way, if I can locate the question exactly. So I have some context of what the question was about.
I'm also looking at the time here, Sister Aisha, and wondering how we should make sure that we get our school teachers out on time so that they are still ready and excited for day 2, not afraid of being kept extra and longer. I know by the time we end up being just like our students, don't we? It's human nature. Alhamdulillah. Sister Aisha, I'll let you actually go ahead and find that. Maybe Sister Lisa can post that to you in the chat and you can answer in the chat. We wanted to give everybody an opportunity to also take a look at the curriculum itself. Now, we only have 10 minutes left, and I realize that I also want you to do a survey. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to take a pulse with you all. I see myself here as kind of that person who's navigating all of these different speakers and all of you and trying to feel the energy that's going on in the room. And I can imagine that this has been some really heavy content. We've talked a lot about so many different heavy philosophical things. And while we've tried to bring it down to the practical, we haven't yet gotten into the curriculum. Don't worry, inshallah, we will be doing that in our next session. While we wanted to do that right now, what I want to do first right now is just kind of get a sense of where you're at. How are you feeling about your understanding of scientific and Islamic epistemology? If you could choose one of these landforms to represent how you're feeling about it, are you feeling like you're flowing in a river? Are you walking on a plateau? Are you in a valley over here? Are you climbing a mountain? Put it in the chat. How are you feeling? Can somebody from Malik Fahad School, maybe a few of you guys come up to the laptop? Is that a thing? Is it a laptop that we're projecting from? Maybe we can have some of you even come up. Somebody can come up on mic and boldly share. How are you feeling about?
Yeah. Malik Fahad, sorry. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Yeah, what's the pulse in your room there, Malik Fahad School?
We feel like we are climbing a mountain.
Okay. Very honest. I appreciate the vulnerability there. So can somebody share, explain what are the challenges? Climbing a mountain's not easy. What's the reason for feeling like climbing a mountain?
So we're saying climbing a mountain because we are
Yeah, because of that.
sorry, it's just echoing a bit.
Yeah, I know it's a little annoying, but we can understand you.
Yeah, mute this one, mute this one.
You wanna go into? Oh, they can understand. So we're climbing a mountain because we are gaining altitude. So we are going higher and higher in our learning. But of course, it brings us challenges as we go up higher and higher.
I
Allah will
love
overcome
that.
all those challenges and get to where we intend to.
I really like the positive spin on that. Wow, mashallah. Well, yeah, so going higher and higher in our knowledge is not always easy, but it's also an achievement and a task that needs to be done. Subhanallah, I think that that's really beautiful. How about anyone else have something to share in the chat? How are you feeling about your understanding between scientific, not scientific and Islamic epistemology, but just even Islamic epistemology and how this relates to how you're going to teach in your classroom? Has any of this, how are you feeling about that? Does this all make sense? This is all stuff you already knew. Maybe it's a plateau. Okay, you feel like a valley. There's ups and downs, challenges with its own beauty. I love that. Sana, thank you. Hadia feels like she's on a plateau. She's excited to dive into the curriculum and view the resources. Okay, so what we're going to do, inshallah, I did want to actually share. Yes, you will get a recording of the workshop and somebody private. Okay, Anya, you're in a river. You're in a flow of knowledge. Also need to go back and review the materials, as there'll be a lot to share. Exactly. Also, it depends on what a river means. Trees mean for me hope. Mountain means keep going. MashaAllah. Okay, so what I want you guys to feel comfortable with, inshallah, is that first of all, I loved what Sister Aisha did in terms of like taking what Dr. Omar was saying and then really breaking it down in between some of the ways concretely and how Islamic epistemology is different. I wrote down 3 key facts in addition to what she had pointed out. Revelatory knowledge, which expands our scope of what is known. Supernatural is also explored. And not neutral, which is so mind-boggling for me, who was trained in the traditional secular sciences and worldview, where actually neutrality was such an important fact. As a qualitative researcher, I often had to, argue against the quantitative researchers who claimed that we were not neutral and claimed that they were neutral. So, this is all really fascinating, subhanAllah, to me. This is the website, you guys. The curriculum is actually all available for you to explore. And we do have to get together again in 3 more days, inshallah. Inshallah, on that day, we're going to start off with somewhat of a model of the lesson. Whereas Dr. Omar shared a lot of foundational information about Islamic worldview, Dr. Asim Padella will be actually getting into the 4th unit. I think it's the 4th unit, right, Sister Aisha? Human enhancement and transhumanism.
Yes, inshallah.
And when you go in here onto the website, if you have the desire, you can go ahead and fill in this form and then access all of the materials for free. So this is already there. Inshallah, we will build in time. We know that our Australians actually have work-life balance and they don't work on weekends. Is that right? Malik Fahad and Sarina? Unlike us Americans, at least. Okay, but nonetheless, I want you to know that that's going to be there, inshallah. And you can take a look at all of this stuff. All of these materials are here. Mashallah, you see that there's multiple lessons, multiple assessments. So, as happens with many of us when we're teaching, we've kind of overplanned and we don't have time for this time to explore aspect. Inshallah, we'll get to it because I'm really interested in having you also get on to the rest of your day, mashallah, after such a heavy session. Okay. So what we're going to do now, oops, it's not that, but that's fine. I'm so sorry, you guys. Is I'm going to actually share with you just what I want you to do. If you have the ability to do this for tomorrow. So we're not going to do the time to explore. I just kind of gave you like a 30-second sneak peek, but inshallah, you will have time. We're going to make sure you have time tomorrow on our next day. We're not going to do that breakout discussion, sadly. But what I do want to tell you is that for day 2, meaning in 3 days when we meet, whether it's Monday for you in Australia and Pakistan and Malaysia and Sri Lanka, or if it's Sunday night for us here in the United States and Canada, we are asking if you can please try and bring like a science textbook that you teach from, or your scope and sequence, or whatever other materials might help you really think very, very concretely about what you are supposed to be doing in your classroom and with your science departments in terms of the science curriculum, so that you can actually delve into the website and look at all of the materials and come up with a plan for how you're going to be embedding it into that, into the way in which you teach, into the topics that you teach, inshallah. So we'll have a sample lesson or unit kind of with Dr. Asim, and then we'll do this action planning, inshallah, day 2. So we'll get really deep into it. For some reason, these QR codes don't want to show up. So what we'll do here, it was just showing, you know, when the technology doesn't work with you. Okay.
The link was posted in the chat for the survey.
Oh, you did that, Lisa. Thank you so much. Okay, so the link is in the chat. How will Malik Fahad get that? Sister, and the other schools that have joined like kind of in one space, is that something that you all are able to see? And fill out?
And there is a question in the chat, if the curriculum is available to be used now in the classroom, or do they have to
Yes,
wait?
absolutely, absolutely. It is, and inshallah, on our day 2, we're also going to share a link to a WhatsApp group if that's something that you are interested in joining, so that we can support you. It'll be a virtual professional learning community that we will have, and inshallah, we would like for you to join it so that we can be there to support you with any questions that you have as you're engaged in implementation. And we'll have a few live sessions too, inshallah, in the next few months, so that for those of you who are interested in immediately implementing this, we can support you with any questions that arise. So here's the day 1 survey for our schools that have joined and were projected on a large screen. Please feel free to take a picture of that. You will only be receiving a certificate of completion if you complete both of these surveys. We do ask for your name and email address in it, but I will aggregate and anonymize all of the information so you can be open about your feedback, and we'll explore that information in an anonymized fashion. The name and email address is just to create your certificates. So just some general questions like what supported your learning? What challenges did you encounter in your learning? And feel free to write as much or as little as you'd like to answer that question. What are those questions? And Sister Anya asked about standards. Is there a standard crosswalk with secular sciences? I'm not sure I understand what you mean, Sister Anya. Do you mind?
Yeah, hello. Assalamu alaikum.
Hey, walaikum salam.
Yeah. So what I meant was that when it comes to our, for example, New York State Regents exams, we have standards that we need to follow.
Yes.
So if there's a standard that applies to this curriculum, maybe we could be able to match up so we can see where we can actually fit this curriculum into the secular curriculum. Because our
Yes.
students take a New York State Regents exam at the end of the year.
Wonderful, Sister Anya, mashallah. Actually, Sister Aisha and their team has aligned this. Sister Aisha, is it with Common Core Standards?
Yes, so NGSS as well as Common Core Standards. And you'll see, inshallah, in day 2, hopefully, inshallah, if we're still excited, inshallah, we'll see you all again on the next session. I will be actually sharing how exactly that aligns with a typical biology curriculum, and then see how you can infuse both the bioscience and Islam curriculum with a typical biology curriculum and basic coursework. And I have actually aligned it with Australia's NSW, I believe it is, their standards as well. So inshallah, we'll take a look at how to practically apply these lessons into a regular biology curriculum, as well as how the ideal way of applying this curriculum is. So the more application and kind of scope and sequence, inshallah, all of that will be covered in the next session.
Okay. Jazakallah khairan. Thank you all so much. I'm very impressed with our Australian counterparts and our colleagues around the world who, you know, when it's time is done, time is done. So we want to honor that. Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdik ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Jazakumullah khairan for joining us and spending your Friday evening with us, brothers and sisters, and the other part of the world, and my brothers and sisters in North America for joining your Thursday night. Please have a good night's sleep, and we'll see you, inshallah, in 3 days, Sunday night here in North America, and Monday afternoon, morning in the rest of the world, inshallah, and we will get deep into this. Don't be afraid, inshallah, it's all going to come together by day 2, and you will be excited and thrilled to implement this into your classrooms, I pray, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan for your feedback and for your time. Assalamu alaikum. Take care. Have a good night or good day, good weekend. Anybody who has any questions, in addition, we're happy to stay on. I'm happy to stay on, Aisha. I don't mean to keep you. Jazakallah khair. We'll share the recording and resources.
I have a very quick question.